Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how the Conservatives, even now that they're starting to accept that they are headed for maybe their worst election result ever, are still not learning lessons. Their attempt to con voters with tax cuts this month has not, by their own admission, worked, yet they're still going to carry on with a failing strategy. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So if the main feature of last week, and I suppose there were two features, but if the main feature was the Conservatives starting to realise that their perceptions about the polling were dead wrong, the feature of this week seems to be that they are deciding not to reevaluate the false assumptions on which they base those perceptions. The Tories are basically not learning lessons. Published in the Times an article about how Tory strategists are concerned that their £9 billion pretend national insurance cut this month hasn't worked on voters. For context, this is about half the amount that councils need to avoid going bankrupt next year. They blew it on not helping life get better for people. They blew it on a tax cut bribe for the election, and it's not worked. They say it's not worked. Now, I could have told them it wouldn't work for most voters, at any rate. It is generally the case in the UK that the public accepts taxes in return for decent public services. Taxes are not a bogeyman for us. There are some key voters for the Conservatives who like lower taxes, absolutely, of course. But most would still prefer the public investment over tax cuts if there's a need. If they perceive that there is a need in their local area for public investment, that's what they prioritise. And right now there is a need everywhere. Polling shows that every demographic that the Conservatives could possibly be interested in would prefer the government didn't cut taxes this year and boosted public spending instead. Such is the obviously perilous state of our public services. This is just what the public want. It even includes 52% of Conservative voters preferring spending to tax cuts to 36% who would rather the tax cuts. Thank you very much. Although perhaps therein lies part of the problem. Ordinarily, I would say that the majority there who want the public spending are not going to be bought with tax cuts because it's the opposite of what they want. The ones wanting the tax cuts are probably committed Conservative voters anyway, so the Tories must be mad to be going for the tax cuts. But they may fear that those in favour of tax cuts are a high risk of not voting Conservative this time. Maybe they've got detailed polling on the matter. However, with the polling that we do have publicly available, I simply cannot see how they gain more votes than they lose, even in target seats, with these tax cuts. It's like tax cuts is all the Conservatives know when it comes to a tricky general election. Cut taxes, then put them back up again, just like they did in 1992, a year the Tories are trying to replicate because it was a proper victory from the jaws of defeat moment for them. Though, as I've discussed before, those who analysed the details of polls did see it coming even at the time. And just to highlight how stupid the Conservatives are, the front page of the Mail on Sunday yesterday was promoting the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, talking about introducing a new Lawson Boom. Now, here's the thing. The Lawson Boom was a disaster. It took the form of massive cuts to income tax. That sound familiar? In the belief that the economy was slowing down, what Lawson's policies did was cause house prices and inflation to skyrocket. In fact, the term Lawson Boom came from Labour. The fact that Hunt is now promoting a Tory policy which was named by Labour should have been a bit of a warning sign to him. What happened, of course, what happens, you tell me. What happens when inflation skyrockets? That's right, they put up interest rates. And then what happened was a lot of people lost their houses, couldn't afford the mortgage repayments, lot of repossessions happened. It was an absolute death blow for the Conservatives. It led to Lawson resigning and being replaced by John Major. It also led to the Conservatives crashing in the polls, which is why everyone thought Labour would win in 1992. However, booting out Thatcher a little bit later and replacing her with Major did the trick for them. That was to do with other things as well. Thatcher's popularity took a massive hit due to a number of other issues, including the poll tax, which Lawson ironically opposed. So what Jeremy Hunt is proposing to do with his Lawson-style income tax cuts is to recreate the conditions whereby a reasonably popular Conservative Party suddenly became about as popular as dog shit on your new trainers. What won them the 1992 election was essentially stopping it all. You know, getting rid of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor who's brought us that Lawson Boom. It did not work out well for the Chancellor who introduced it, is what I'm saying. Although I will say there's another thing to consider here. So the median age in the UK, looked it up, is just under 41 years old. Oh dear, I'm older than most people in the country. So over half of the people in the country right now will have basically not known what that is. They'll have been at best 2 years old, with most not having been born. I was not quite a teenager when it happened. So most people will not know what a Lawson Boom is. And detached from any knowledge of the concept, the Tories may imagine, well, the voters will think it's a good thing. It was a good thing. They may be trading on the idea that the concept sounds good and the consequences would hit after the election and be Labour's problem anyway. Because the Lawson Boom actually was done just shortly after them winning a general election. So they felt the full force of the political comeback. Another case here of winning back some voters with misty-eyed recollections of the days of Thatcher in their heartlands and salting the earth for the next Labour government who would have to deal with the fallout. Moreover, if Labour feel that the Tories might actually have an angle here, then, you know, they could launch a campaign to explain to the public just what the Lawson Boom was, and that it was Labour who came up with the term to describe the explosive consequences. Then, you know, it could still bite the Tories on the arse with voters. Especially as, although I say most people won't know what that was, given that the Tories heavily target the elderly, any voters who were mortgage holders at the time will remember, because even if they didn't lose their house, they will remember all of a sudden having massive mortgage bills and having to cut back to get through it. I think a lot of those older voters will remember it, and not in fond terms. You know, a lot of people lost their houses when that market ended up crashing. In fact, the Lawson Boom formed part of Labour's winning campaign in 1997. Gordon Brown promised no more boom and bust, because the term boom was very much associated with bust amongst the public. Not that Brown did stop the old boom and bust cycle, but at the time it was something the public feared. And people in the age groups the Tories mostly target, I think they will remember. It was a scary old time for a lot of people. But every time I try to think how the Tories might be promoting this idea on the basis of most people not knowing what the Lawson Boom was, or having forgotten if they did. I think the Tories have already not... The fact that they've already acknowledged that their pretend tax cut this month didn't work, you think, so why would they think the same thing in March is going to be any different? I mean, yes, I get just because a strategy fails doesn't mean you abandon it. It may be that you did it wrong. That's what people are trying to say about Brexit. Oh, they just did it wrong. But wouldn't you then have to understand what you did wrong? So why didn't that strategy work? Understand the fundamentals. Because if the Tories don't do that, if they just go, oh, we messed it up, let's just do exactly the same thing in exactly the same way and see what happens. How are they going to refine the strategy so it does work in the spring? Because looking at the polling we have, it looks like it didn't work primarily because voters, even most Conservative voters, are hankering after tax cuts. Yes, the rate of tax is the highest it's been since the post-war years, but people want public services to work. I think because we keep voting Conservative in this country, people get the impression that the British public are essentially Conservatives and tend towards this sort of free market capitalism idea. It's like, we really don't. The Conservatives keep winning due to a few key factors, which has got little to do with their policies. First, the Conservatives are really focused on winning elections. Like they take a very professional approach to it. They prioritise winning above everything else. Not right now, obviously. The party has been taken over by idiots, but historically. Second, the left tend to have lots of fights with ourselves and end up going off in a huff and starting a new party. This means that with our first past the post system, the centre-left vote is split lots of ways and the right-wing vote not really at all. Again, not strictly true right now with Reform UK, but again, historically. Those are the reasons we keep getting Conservative governments, because our political system is unfit for purpose and too many people on the left are focused on narrow interests to the exclusion of the choice they actually have available. But we're not afraid of taxes. We do like good public services and we like the government to take responsibility for them. The Conservatives simply don't seem to understand this. And so they look like embarking on the economic policy that basically ended the Chancellor who implemented it. So it looks like the Tories could well be making another mistake here. By late March, they may be getting deja vu, and going, oh, these tax cuts didn't work. What, like in January? Yeah, just like in January, we did the same thing and we got the same results. Imagine that. So what are they going to do then? Panic, yes, but what else? It might be that this is what causes them to go long for the autumn election out of sheer desperation. Or do they just accept that there's way worse to come this autumn, ETIAS standards checks for the autumn trade and so on, and decide that they may as well put themselves out their misery and go for the May election anyway? Will be interesting. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.